Hey, welcome back. This is The Process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is lesson 40, team analysis part 6. We're really focusing on the tight end today, looking at some really interesting stats and statistical testing, and I think gives you an advantage. Please go back and see the previous parts. We've certainly went through the wide receivers and uh, running backs, and I really delivered some nice findings that is very actionable for this year's draft. So I urge you to go back, get your draft notes, kind of, get your mojo going for that, and let's win your fantasy football draft, right? I think that's about 60% of the show right there. So I think gives us a great advantage. The few that are listening, good for you. You're willing to try to chop the wood. Then you're going to go get the fire, not the other way around, and that's good. It's good that most in our league want the quick and easy, and they want the fire, and they'll worry about chopping the wood later because they will not make the playoffs, or a few will get lucky and they'll never know that they were luck. They'll think they're super skilled, and that's good. If you play again with them next year, they'll be even more confident about their luck, which will most likely run out. So let's continue talking about positions. We're going to focus on the tight end position. So once again, the last lessons have focused on last year's uh, best and worst teams, and above average, below average, and worst teams. And the team type represents those in terms of eights. So the top eight is the best, the bottom eight is the worst. And then we have the above average, which is 9 to 16, and then 17 through whatever, what is it, 25th, that would be below average. So let's look at the average fantasy points of the tight end ones from those teams for the next year, right? See what's going on here. And to me, when I look at the tight end one, that looks like those are very close together, and in fact, even below average. So it looks to me as I'm taking account the numbers that the worst teams last year don't tend to have a great tight end, not even close. You're losing 30 to 40 points a season hanging around and fishing for tight ends on those teams. So I say avoid it, don't do it. And this is just the total looking at all tight ends here. And we might have a little difference, but I think it looks like most of these are about the same. So I don't think there's any difference here, which is interesting, completely different from the running backs and uh, wide receivers. When we look at the percentage above average, each fantasy average was, we see that the best was 111%, so 11.5% above average. Above average teams were about 6%. Uh, Below average were about 1%. And boy, you take it on the chin if you're hanging with the tight ends from the worst teams from last year. Theoretically, 18, almost 30% of a penalty for those tight ends if you're playing there. So you do not want to fish in those waters, folks. Don't care, how flashy and whatnot. Let's use the stats. And so let's get a little deeper into the stats of all this testing. And this is just me plotting what I just showed you. Here is tied in one, and looks like those are about the same. Notice that you're tied in two, though. Looks like if you're going to grab a backup for your tight end one, you should fish only in the best teams if there's any available. If not, looks like there's not much difference here. Looks like everybody on tight end three is about the same. And it looks like below average, those tight ends are pretty good for tight end 4 and 5 in a premium league or whatnot. If you're really fishing for lots of tight ends, I don't know the bench size, but and notice the best teams, they don't have a good tight end 4, but they kind of bounce back with the tight end 5. So you can kind of see there are some interesting suggestions here on how we fish in our draft for our tight ends. Here's the distribution of tight end ones here. Again, almost about the same, these three types of team. Here's the worst. So it looks like a little bit of drop and then a big drop here. So this is where you pay the penalty, about 30% right here on the worst teams from last year. So last year's top 8, last year's 9 to 16, 17 to 24, and the bottom 8. Here's the averages here. And again, it looks like the worst is the only issue that I could see. I would be surprised if there's no differences here. And we can see using the ANOVA statistical test, looking for a probability that what we're seeing in front of us here, these means, is by random chance. And of course, the answer is no, it is not by random chance. This is below 0.05. So that means there's at least one difference in all those groups versus each other. And so we turn to the Tukey test, or in this case, that's what I would use, the highest significant difference test, the Tukey, guy named Tukey, hate to be him, growing up. So let's see what the differences are. Group A, B, C, and D from the team status last year as far as average fantasy points. And unsurprisingly, the worst team is significantly lower than the top and the above average. So the top 16 are much better to fish than the bottom 8. Okay, so just strike that off your draft list. Okay, just get rid of it. So it's more not kind of a positive thing, it's kind of a negative where you just avoid that. So take a look at the bottom 8 and see what that is doing here for us. And if we look at the type 2, we see pretty close, and I don't know if there's much difference here. It doesn't seem to be any different. And notice the averages here a little bit, what, 14%. I'm not sure that's enough. Here's 10% or 10 fantasy points. That doesn't seem like a lot. Let's see. But actually, our statistical friend, the ANOVA, says there is a difference there. So let's find out what it is. And lo and behold, it's telling us, even though it didn't seem like a lot, for your tight end 2s, it's more, again, the negative. Avoid fishing in the bottom 8. So just, you're not taking tight ends from last year's bottom 8. I understand this is the law of numbers, and you could write me and say, oh, I got a good one. Well, statistically, for every one that did it, there's going to be a bunch that it didn't work out. So congratulations, you ignored the stats and you got lucky anyway. It happens, right? Lightning has to strike somewhere, right? Was it the blind pig gets the acorn every once in a while? Broke clock is right twice a day, so that does happen. But I'm telling you, this takeaway is avoid the bottom eight as far as tight end drafting, tight end 1 and 2. Any kind of differences between the tight end 1 and 2 as far as any gaps? Was that a difference? I'm just curious. When you drop down, you obviously do drop down and tight ends. Is there any difference here between the tight end 1 versus 2 as far as percent difference? Just a curiosity thing. And so far, I haven't seen anything like that in wide receivers, running backs, and it doesn't look like for tight ends as well. But, I've got to figure that out. And here's our p-value, which is above 0.05, and there's no significance. You're theoretically not even supposed to do the Tukey test if this is not significant, but I went ahead and showed you anyway. So this was actually a short lesson, but I kind of moved quickly through it because I'm assuming you've seen the previous lessons here, so I didn't, get deep into ANOVA testing or Tukey HSD results and whatnot, but I think you got the take home, which is very clear here at this point. We've had lots of fun here in this, and we still got some more lessons in this world to go, and you gotta love the process here. I do. This is what I do every year, this level of work. So that means, by the time you opened your beer and pulled out your one-page cheat sheet, I've been working for hundreds of hours. Okay, so uh, you better hope I'm not in your league. Okay, so learn the process. Join, join me in crushing the drafts here. Come back. We're having extra amount of fun.